Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today, since it's Monday, we are going to be working in my sketchbook today. But today I am going to be doing 3 spreads. So I'm going to be quickly showing you guys the sketches that I did first. And apologies that you're not going to be able to see the first 2 spreads too well. I did use the palette Color ENO for my sketches, but depending on how hard I press with this pencil, it will show up better on camera or worse on camera. So I'm kind of showing you a demonstration that me like working with the palette Color ENO, sometimes I work a little bit more heavy, and for these ones actually was working quite light. So yeah, here's some close-ups. So you can probably see and probably tell that the first 2 pages are actually of my OC Masaki, and then the last page, which is the 3rd page, is of my OC Akemi. So I kind of wanted to play around to do a few spreads by picking out only 2 markers for the colors, I guess, or like the color scheme of today's sketching session. So for Masaki's, I wanted to do kind of like his normal colors or colors that are more closer to his normal colors. And then the 2nd page will be more kind of like towards autumn, kind of more of those muted tones. And then Akemi was just any of the colors that I find that kind of fit. So here are some of the colors that I'm going to be using today. I was going to pair up this yellow for every spread just to have a little bit of a consistent color throughout all 3 of the spreads. But I decided that I wanted to match some of the colors a little bit more closely to each other, so I decided that I wouldn't use the kind of like orangey yellow color for the 2nd spread, and I believe that the kind of like yellowy orange color that I showed is actually used in the 1st spread and the last spread. So one for Masaki, one for Akemi, and I kind of wanted to just kind of revisit again more of my OCs, just because I'm kind of in that mood where all I want to do is kind of draw my OCs for the most part, but I'm kind of going back to getting to the swing of things because I'm watching a few more streams again, I'm listening to the podcast, and there's like a lot of things I kind of want to draw. There's a lot of 17 things I want to draw, so I'm gonna see what I'm gonna record and which I'm gonna save for myself to kind of just draw on my own time, because sometimes I do have a hard time separating those. But let's talk about the drawings a little bit before I go on to a complete tangent. So the markers that I'm using today are the Magicfly fine liners, and I've used these in videos before, but the difference is that I'm only going to be using the fine tip side. So these markers are actually dual-ended, so they have a fine tip on one side and a brush tip on the other. You can see that on this marker itself I have like 2 lids kind of stacked, or caps I guess, stacked on one another, so it is dual-ended. And I'm not going to be using the brush side today, and the reason being is that I didn't really want to fill in like large areas with the kind of like larger end of the marker. I wanted to focus on mostly using lines or just like kind of flat color, and I've noticed that using the kind of fine liner side of this marker, if I do kind of take a little bit of time to do more of a solid pass of color, it has a little bit less I guess like streaking that's like as noticeable compared to actually using the brush side. So I decided that maybe if I just take my time, I can just get some flat colors by filling it in really tight and close, and then for any of the other areas I will kind of vary up my lines. So you won't see it as much quite yet, just like maybe under Masaki's chin like I'm doing right now. Some areas for his clothing I will do a little bit later. I'm just focusing more or less on the line work for now, and I feel like I approached all 3 of the sketch pages or like the spreads differently from one another for the most part, but they're still like very much similar, and overall visually I think they all look very similar. So the difference is when I'm using these kinds of markers, usually I love using the broad tip because I'm able to fill in kind of sections really fast with kind of big bold colors, and then usually going in with some kind of darker line. So I've used the fine liner side to do more of the line work after I block in a lot of these chunks and stuff, because it is a water-based marker and it would reactivate with itself. So I rather do the line work afterwards, after like chunking in any of the larger areas. And For me, it's just fun to do a lot of the detailing afterwards too, because I don't really have to worry about coloring in the lines. I'm kind of just making up the lines as I go after I've colored in and chunked in like giant shapes, let's say for the hair or for the clothing or for any kind of other areas on the page. But for today, I just wanted to do kind of like, I guess this would be considered just like hatching. It's not cross hatching, it's more or less just hatching. So for this particular spread of Masaki, I am going to be using kind of this turquoise color and then the kind of like orangey yellow color that you're going to see me use a little bit later. And I'm focusing mostly on doing the line work and then blocking in any places that I would deem a lot darker. So like clothing folds, under the chin, hair, the eyes, kind of anything that would be in the back side. So a lot of the times the hair that kind of shows underneath the bottom part of Masaki's head, I tend to color darker just because I feel like it's in the back a little bit more. And anything that's like remotely, I guess, green, I would color in with this color as well, just because it fits Masaki's color palette. And I feel like it balances out a little bit easier having a cooler color and a warmer color, especially because Masaki is very much focused on separating the greens or turquoise color with the browns for his outfit. So I do like to keep them separate for the most part. But you can see some areas that are a lot darker, I'll do more of a solid fill. And then for the lighter colors or anything that I'm doing like a larger fill, I guess, I would take my time to do kind of these vertical lines that are about like 1 centimeter or like half an inch long for the most part. And I was trying to be as consistent as possible by doing this kind of patterning going across to make things look consistent and to look a little bit more clean. So now I'm switching over and using kind of like the orangey yellow color. And the thing I like about the spread the most is the amount of contrast between the colors. I think there's just enough of each on this spread that makes it look kind of nice. And I'm kind of glad I did surround the text with this kind of orangey color rather than coloring in the text. It just makes a little bit more of like a brighter backdrop for some things. And I kind of wish I did that for some of the other sketch pages, because some of them feel like overwhelmingly too much of the main color. So what I consider the main color would be like most likely the line art color, because I start with that first. Or I guess for me it might be the cooler toned color, because like for me, cool colors that I tend to use in conjunction with the warm color, because I like using the warm color to add, let's say, like blush, or to add like little accents, or just like any indication on the skin to give it warmth. I do like it kind of a little bit lighter than any of my line work color. So a lot of my like cooler colors would tend to be a lot darker, just because about like kind of out of habit and my own preference. So you can see that this orange color is a lot lighter than the kind of turquoisey greenish color that I chosen for Masaki, which we did the line work and the initial pass of everything else. But I'm able to kind of like use the orange kind of like just fully across the lines without it covering too much. It also just matches nicely in this spread, which kind of looks really cute. Okay, so I forgot to talk about this too. I wanted this spread to be mostly focused on either his normal outfit or kind of just like pertaining to springtime, because we are kind of shifting away from spring. It is really quickly approaching autumn or fall. And I live for this season. I live for autumn and fall. I love the weather. I love like just the general aesthetic. I don't know, everything about it. I'm also super excited because I think in October, I'm going to be attending a concert with my friends as well, because there's going to be a concert in my city. And I think it's like our first concert since I think middle school or like very early high school. I guess it would be high school, since I think the three of us we weren't super close friends in middle school, so it's probably high school. But yeah, because I think in high school we went to see like a Japanese band that performed at one of the conventions near my city. So yeah, it's been a long time since I've been to a concert with them, and I'm super excited because yeah, it's just been a super long time. Okay, so on to the next spread. You can see that I decided to use a more muted, kind of like foresty dark green for the line work, and a lot of the kind of darker areas that I'm going to be chunking in to be a little bit more like flat and less kind of those vertical lines. And I decided to go with more of a foresty green because I wanted this spread to be more focused on like autumn and fall. And I do kind of wish, because I mentioned this a little bit ago, like a few minutes ago, that I kind of wish this spread had more of a even balance between the first color and the secondary color like I did in the first page. And the reason being is that I really push a lot of the green for Masaki's outfit rather than kind of alternating between the brown that I'm going to be using for the spread versus the green that I decided to really shade. And I think it's also because in the back of my brain, I'm usually draw a majority of Masaki's clothing to be on the cooler side and on the darker side just because his hair and his apron are the colors that usually match. So Masaki's design is very much like his hair, his apron. So we got like his head, and then we have part of his torso, and then we have his boots, which are kind of more of a, I guess like a yellowy ochre kind of color. Or probably, yeah, I think it's an ochre. Yellow ochre color. And it kind of just goes throughout his whole design, but then to break up the design, I usually have some kind of cooler color. So we have like the turquoise teal color, and then we have like a baby blue kind of jeans, a very light wash of denim. And I did kind of want it to be somewhat even. So I kind of botched it up for the other Masaki doodles. This one's fine because he has his apron on, so the brown is going to kind of fill up that space. But for everything else, like his sweater, his hoodie, I'm going to be coloring in this same green in a very similar intensity throughout all of them. So it becomes heavily too green in my opinion. And I feel like, kind of like preference-wise maybe, you might want to have one color that's a little bit more of like an accent color, where it's like it's not everywhere, but it's enough to give like a little bit of a punch and a pop. But for me, because I'm using two colors, I did want to have kind of like an even amount for the most part. I didn't want this to be overly green, but that's kind of what happened. So you can see that anything to do with his turtleneck or a sweater, I've colored in kind of in this kind of scratchy kind of way. So I mentioned earlier as well that I kind of approached coloring these pages a little bit different. And the reason being is that the very first page, I was trying my best to keep the lines very consistent. I was also making sure to lift up my pen every time I made a new mark so that we can have a start and a stop between the lines for everything. But for this one, I kind of like went back to what I usually do, which is kind of a back and forth motion, and it's very tight zigzags, basically like vertical zigzags. So even though if you look at it, it kind of looks like just a bunch of vertical lines, but it's not very like clean compared to the first one. This one's just very much, I guess like the only one that does have like more of that start stop for the lines is the one that Masaki's playing with his phone with the hoodie. So like the one that is above the one I'm currently working on. And I guess anything for the hair, I kind of did more or less that kind of or I guess not. I'm just watching myself in the footage and I'm doing the zigzag motion after I did a row of normal kind of lines. But basically, I should have probably mentioned this earlier too, is that whenever I browse Pinterest, I think my algorithm on there has been more geared towards like traditional art, and I've been seeing a lot of people do like inking in their sketchbook, and a lot of people that I see on there where I like their aesthetic kind of do the more of like normal, very straightforward, very clean hatching. And I know I'm not the type of person who works super clean when they sketch or they draw. Sometimes I like to build up stuff, so it's like I don't end up erasing, so I leave a lot of my straggly lines everywhere, so I don't really keep it super clean. But some people are so precise with their drawing, where there's no guidelines, there's very good like sense of gesture and line weight, and there's like purpose to every line that they place. And I'm very envious of people who have the confidence to do that, and I always love to see their inking because the confident lines to me is very attractive to look at. Oh, by the way, we're moving on to Akemi. So for his marker choice, we are using kind of a darker blue and a kind of like orangey yellow for the most part. And it reads more as an orange, if anything. I feel like the cap at the beginning was kind of yellowy, unless I switched markers. Maybe I switched markers because I feel like this orange color is the same one that I used for the first Masaki spread. But yeah, I decided to color his eyes first and then do the line work afterwards because his eyes are actually supposed to be more of a yellow anyways, or an amber color, and I didn't want to color them in blue, but I do like to do the eyes first because they kind of make and break the face for me. So yeah, back to the Pinterest thing. That's kind of the reason why, but also I think ever since like the last part of summer, I've been really into just wanting to improve my inking a lot. So I've been trying my best to, practice different methods and also see what works in this particular notebook versus on other paper. And maybe it's in the back of my brain that I'm kind of low-key prepping myself to do something for Inktober where I don't know. I don't know if I want to go ambitious or if I want to do like a project to do with inking or something, like it's not in my sketchbook, or I do actual finished drawings. I'm still gonna debate. I also don't have a particular topic. I don't know. I am kind of thinking of making a flower list and then drawing Masaki with the flowers so I can practice inking something that I wanted to practice, which is like foliage and flowers, but then I can still draw a character because I still like drawing people the most. So maybe I'll do that. We'll see if I hold myself to it. I don't know if I'm gonna make this like a public list for other people to follow. If I do, I'll make sure to post it like at least a week beforehand, like a week before October actually starts, so that I can also give myself a little bit of prep, but also a heads up for you guys if you would like to join in. But I think that could be probably very fun to do if I did something maybe flower themed. But I feel like I won't do them in my sketchbook, so I might have to think of a different alternative or see if I have any other mixed media sketchbooks lying around, because I kind of want to play around with like my dip pen or even my fountain pen ink again, because those are very fun to use and I would like to get better at them. But this paper is not very well suited for it because it is a lot thinner kind of paper and the ink seeps through so much, and I don't really like the ghosting if I want to do some kind of like inking that I really want to kind of preserve or keep for future viewing or anything like that. So I don't want to have too much ghosting, which is another reason why I like using these Magicfly markers or any kind of like water-based markers. I feel like I get the least amount of ghosting because no kind of like alcohol ink or anything that has like super liquidy ink that's gonna like seep through the paper. I don't really have to worry about it for these kinds of markers or pens. And these are always come with a variety of cute colors and a good variety, so I was able to pick out colors that I think kind of like suited the character a little bit more or suit each other, because usually for me, and you guys are probably see this a lot whenever I work in my sketchbook, is that whenever I do kind of these marker drawings, I usually pick at least 3 colors or more plus black when I do these kinds of spreads. But I do like the kind of dual colors that I did for these kind of spreads, because they kind of remind me of how I did the ballpoint pen drawings a while ago, where I kind of picked 2 colors to do the spread. It just looks kind of a little bit, I don't know, it looks cute, but it looks a little bit more clean because it's not like a barrage of colors, if that makes sense. But this particular spread, so if we are comparing it to the very first one, I think in order, we are gradually getting less and less of the accent color. But I feel like for Akemi's design, even overall, because he wears a lot of darker colors and he has a little bit of lighter colors here and there, let's say like a kind of his shirt or even just like accessories and stuff tend to be a little bit on the lighter side, but the majority of his clothing itself is on the darker side. And then when I decided to do his autumn outfit, I made his top dark and the turtleneck lighter, so it became a lot more heavily blue in this case because blue is kind of like the darker color that I chose. Also, I've been layering the kind of yellow into his hair because his hair is supposed to be more of a like grayish green color, if anything, or a grayish turquoise color that's very light and kind of dull. Yeah, it didn't really show up, but I did not use the yellow color as much, and I feel like this spread would have benefited from me adding some kind of texture or kind of breaking up some of the sketches a little bit by placing the color into the background, similar to when I wrote Summertime for the summer Masaki spread, where I kind of had a little bit of that chunk of orange because the two Masaki surrounding that chunk of orange are very much kind of turquoise focused. So yeah, here are kind of like the little zoom, what am I saying? Close-ups. Close-ups of each of these spreads, and I'll show you guys the spreads overall at the very end anyways, because I didn't show them at the end of each session. But yeah, I think all of them turned out pretty cute, and I don't hate them too much. Like, what am I saying? I don't hate the two last pages that I did too much. So I do think it was just fun to do and kind of just draw my OCs a little bit more, especially like Akemi, because I feel like I struggle to draw him still, and hopefully I will draw him more so I'm comfortable drawing him more and more so they don't get too neglected, because I mostly draw Masaki anyways. But hope you guys enjoyed today's drawing session and of all the three spreads that we did. So kind of blue and orange, we have the brown and kind of foresty green, and then after that my favorite spread, which is kind of the turquoise and the orange, which I think looks super cute. The colors are just very cute together. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!